All right, welcome to another episode of the Road Insights podcast. As I'm recording this, it is July 18th, and let me tell you something. I just got back from a trip with my wife. We attended a conference, spent a couple extra days out there. It was my birthday, had a great time out there in Austin. My first trip, to be honest with you, and I really enjoyed the city. I am somebody that likes to get out there in a large city environment and just discover, explore, which means I did a lot of walking. And with a lot of walking in Austin, Texas, in the middle of summer, brings a lot of heat. So that's what we're talking about today. Heat. How does that impact our roadways, our environment, the heat coming off of the asphalt pavements? You heard the term concrete jungle. Hey, a lot of places are literally asphalt jungles with all this infrastructure out there in these dense areas. Matter of fact, there's a term that kind of comes with that for these large areas. All of the heat coming off of these buildings and these asphalt products, being remitted back into the atmosphere. Something like the urban heat island effect or something along that line. I may have gotten that wrong. Probably should have prepped a little bit better, but that's what I'm wanting to say. So dig into that and dive into that a little bit if you have interest. But it's a real thing. And, what does that really say? When you go check the weather forecast and you're in Austin, Texas, like I was last week, and you see it's going to be 104 degrees, you're like, man, that's pretty hot. But you know what? We can deal with 104 degrees. Let's go explore. Let's go take a walk. Let's go take a jog. So on one of the days in particular, if you're familiar with Austin, Texas, I want to say it's maybe like the 6th Street District, maybe off of Congress or something like that. Again, my first time out there, had a lot of fun. Hey, I even bought some cowboy boots. That'll be in a different podcast series coming out at some point in time. I traded in the Jordans for some cowboy boots, y'all. It's pretty crazy. But the reality was a lot of walking. Checked out a lot of shops, really enjoyed it. But again, temperatures at 104. When you think about the heat index, that becomes around 112. Then you have this urban heat island effect situation. So these are asphalt surfaces that we were out there walking on or near, out there on the sidewalk, next to these roadways, this infrastructure, buildings everywhere. And I'll ask you real quick. So what do you all think? A nice hot 100-degree day, sun's out in full effect. What do you think that surface temperature of the asphalt roadway is? The answer is around 160 degrees. That's crazy, right? So when you get into the summer months and you're, say, north of 75 degrees, you look at maybe the average. I don't know what the average is. I'm not trying to be, Al Roker out here on this podcast, but let's just say the average temperature is around 80, 85, nationwide during the summer. You're going to add about 50 degrees on top of that to that asphalt surface. Now, when you're out there walking, you got shoes on, right? You're out there, you got your shoes on, but what if you're taking your pets on a walk? Now, all of a sudden, you really need to start paying attention to these temperatures. Anything north of 80 degrees out there, and you've got your dog out there, you're on the walk, they're really going to feel that in a very negative way, cause a lot of injuries. Kind of a funny story with this is one of the days we were out in Austin, we were at the Marriott, the JW Marriott, and we went to the pool. And coming outside of the building, to the pool complex out there, we were all in the shade. We took the first row of chairs that were just outside of the shade. And, you take your shoes off, your flip-flops, whatever, and we sit in the chair. About 10, 15 minutes goes by, and wow, was it hot, right? We could feel that sun in full effect. We decided to get up and go get in the pool. And as soon as those feet hit the concrete, now the concrete is going to be a little bit cooler than the asphalt, but it's not like we're talking about, the same temperature as outside. It was still significantly hot. Well, we had a mad dash to the pool. We couldn't get there fast enough, for the relief from the feet. So imagine your pets, things like that when you're out there on the walk. So think of those things. The other side of all of this, outside of your physical being, yourself, taking care of yourself, is the actual damage that can be done potentially to our asphalt infrastructure because of the heat. So a couple things come to my mind being in this space forever, if you will. But we have to remember that asphalt is intended to be a flexible infrastructure product. There's some advantages in some cases with the asphalt being so hot because it might kind of mend itself. You take a look at all these micro cracks, these longitudinal transverse, some block cracks that may just be getting to surface. Very, very small hairline fractures, if you will. Think of it that way. That flexibility from the sun getting to 150 degrees, heating that asphalt surface up, and you've got constant traffic on there, it might help to alleviate that a little bit. But let's be honest, the reality is as soon as that pavement cools off, those cracks are going to come back, right? Freeze thaw, just think of that, but just in a solar situation with the flex of the pavement. But think of rutting for potential issue. The softer that pavement is, especially if it's not a thick enough structure, there's not a lot of structural value there. If you're getting heavy equipment on a very hot asphalt product, you might start to see signs of rutting a little bit faster than you normally would. Another distress that comes to mind that's synonymous with heat is bleeding. And bleeding is just what it sounds like. If you've got a lot of emulsion within that roadway design, that asphalt design, if you will, that mixed design, you might see that asphalt seeping up through the voids, that asphalt contact, that emulsions, and sitting on top, maybe pooling a little bit on top of the road surface. Now, it's not really affecting the pavement itself, so to speak, but it will affect your car, your shoes, things like that. If you've ever been out there on a hot day, especially if you're in a rural environment and you're on a chip and seal type of roadway or a tar and chip roadway, you really see this, right? Tar and chip roadways are typically like a salt and pepper color. You're putting that emulsion down, putting a bunch of rock on top, and if you're lucky, they're rolling it. And they're just kind of seating the rock and stone in place. And then over time, as the traffic gets on it, it kind of settles it in, compacts the stone a little bit. But you'll start to see that the black strips coming up through there and laying right on top, that's your bleeding. And if you've been like me, in the inspection game for a long period of time, heck, I can remember obviously a time, it wasn't that long ago, we didn't have so much technology in the field to rely upon. We had to go on site and physically evaluate with expertise on-site analysis what's happening on with our roadways. So, I can remember ruining my first pair of shoes when I was a pretty young guy, maybe 19, 20 years old. I didn't really understand what all these distresses were. I stepped in that stuff one time and boy, I'll tell you, never again, right? So there's those elements right there. So what can we do potentially to kind of offset this issue? Again, if you're in a rural environment, there is no real urban heat island effect happening to you, but more and more of our land, that's out there is being developed, and especially in these larger cities, again, like in Austin, Texas. So what I'm going to parlay that into is, say, Phoenix, Arizona. Very large city, very big in terms of an urban environment. They're also out there by the desert, so we're going to get a lot of hot temperatures during the day, absolutely toying with those 100-degree temperatures day in, day out through the summer, maybe even into the spring and the fall, So this is a city that was very proactive in taking a look at this issue, because if you're remitting off an additional 50 to 60 degrees, you're adding that into the air. That's a lot of additional heat. You're deflecting that heat back on out. So that's creating a lot more air pollution, right? That's a fact. This is all documented stuff. So if we can find ways to mitigate and help alleviate these urban heat islands, we're going to make some real gains for everybody in those environments. So the city of Phoenix went on a pilot project going back to, I want to say 2020, maybe no later than 2021. And they partnered with a company who put down a specific mix design to kind of help mitigate this. It's called the Cool Pavement Program or Cool Pavement Project, something like that. And they applied this in multiple districts throughout their city over a period of a few years. And then they measured the results. Thermal heat imaging, those types of technologies were employed to take a look at, well, these roadway surfaces, these areas of the same district that did not receive the treatment versus those that did. And here's the results. When you read them on black and white paper, if you will, not staggering, anywhere between a 5 to 15 degree difference. But when you think about the actual impact of that, say going from 150 degrees down to 135, and you're thinking of over an extended period of time, let alone years and years and years, well, that's absolutely going to have a great impact in a positive manner for our environment, for all of us as citizens. That extra 15 degrees, I'll tell you what, probably would have felt that difference, would have appreciated it out there in Austin had I, on my 3.5-4 mile walk back there on my birthday. So pavement, it's a heated topic. That's the tagline today. That's the episode today, coming at you from a couple different perspectives. I hope this added value to your infrastructure studies and your podcast enjoyment. Would love to hear how I'm doing. So if you're watching this here on YouTube with me, leave me a comment. You can also check out this podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Please provide a review if this is adding value to you, to yourself. If you think someone else might want to hear this, please share, and as always, I'm interested in hearing your topic ideas. That's where this one came in from. It came in from an outside user. Thought I'd run with it and have some fun with it. So until the next one, pave the way.